Actually, the journaling that we talked about came from Patrick and Cameron. Patrick was very stats oriented. He wrote down a journal with all of his tournament stats and was a lot more numbers oriented. And Cameron wrote more of a diary every single day after every practice. He just wrote down what he did and how it went. I kind of combined those two approaches, and we can talk about this more. But another, you know, player that I have to give a lot of credit to is my roommate and one of my best friends in the world, Virat Badwar, was also in my year. He was the 11th ranked amateur in the world starting at Stanford, not just junior, 11th ranked amateur. And he was one of the best putters I'd ever seen. And I was one of the worst putters you've ever seen. I lost on average 3 strokes per round. I calculated my strokes gained. I averaged -3. On that 82 I shot at Palm Springs, I lost 7.5 strokes putting. That's really bad. But you couldn't putt that bad left-handed with your eyes closed. And I went my entire freshman year and never beat Virat in a putting contest. And the difference between my freshman year and my sophomore year was literally just 3 strokes on the greens per round, 9 shots a tournament. And that's the difference between being a freshman that's not really making the lineup to having the best year of golf results wise in my life. In 2015, I won 7 out of 12 tournaments in 2015, and I just felt like I could do no wrong. And that's why, and that is when I realized I would always rather be the worst player on the best team than the best player on the worst team, because you can learn from people. And just whether it's through osmosis or watching what they did or just competing, you know, I learned so much from Patrick and Cameron about their processes. David Boot, his short game, Virat Badwar, incredible putter. And, you know, I went in with the attitude that everyone on this team probably does something better than me. And if I figure out what that is and I work on it and try and copy them and learn from them, I'll be a better player.
That you just literally spelled out the textbook for me to give to every incoming freshman of how to take care of your business your freshman year. That is it right there. You have to be willing to, not willing, eager. You've got to be excited about learning from people who've already been in your shoes, and they're obviously having great results. That right there is just phenomenal. But what strikes me is that we were going to talk about journaling is you combine 2 guys' journals together. One who was very, very numbers oriented and one who was situation story oriented, and you put them together. Is that sort of still the way you do journaling today?
It is, but actually the reason my journaling started was I was so excited to be on the Stanford golf team. I thought this was going to be the coolest thing, and I just wanted to have a record of everything I did so that when I look back in 20, 30 years, I go, man, these are my 4 years on the Stanford golf team. So I remember writing down with the first qualifying round, shot 71 at Stanford. Fun story, I walked out of Arriaga. I was so nervous. We had 3 days on campus before school started, and I walked out of Arriaga Dining. I tried to force down one last pancake because I was pretty nervous. Got through the double doors and just didn't feel good. Made a beeline for the trash can and put all my breakfast back there. And I remember I turned around and looked, and V was standing at me with huge eyes going, dude, are you okay? I'm fine. I feel better now. Shot 71. I still remember, you know, I said I hit it really badly. The first 6 holes, wasn't feeling good, but then I squared up my shoulders and hit it great on the back 9. And it's just little things like that. And then I did that for every single round. And I started to see patterns. I started to realize the utility of going back and finding what fields were useful for me, because you can't possibly remember everything. Even this past week in Mayakoba, I was having so much trouble out of this past Palom rough. It's an inch and a half of this really thick bladed rough, but I was hitting half of my chips 3 feet out of the, I couldn't get it on the green. And then Travis, my caddy, said, didn't you figure something out last year? I remember we spent an hour and a half on the chipping green. And I went back in my notes. Sure enough, handle down, handle forward, use the full length of the toe and chop. Started doing that and made it a lot easier. So I still find a lot of use for it. Every time I work with Butch or one of my coaches, I write down what I was doing, what I was working on. But the journaling started out as something just to remember what I did, kind of nostalgic. And I realized pretty quickly how useful it was as a tool. And I used to write down every single shot of, and I did in college, every single shot I hit. But now that I'm playing 30 events a year, I literally don't have the time to write down 100 rounds worth of shots with travel and practice and everything. So I do that in my pin sheet now. On the column of my pin sheet, I write down uh, everything I need to remember the shot I hit. So if I go back and 5 years from now look at my Akoba pin sheets, I'll remember the shots I hit, how I hit it, what the wind condition was, and I'll be able to play that hole again in my head, because I'm not Tiger Woods. I can't keep every single shot I've ever hit in my head on repeat.